When nostalgia and sentimental value are combined, the effect can be powerful. Do you still have the game you played the most when you were a kid? Most retro video game consoles were built like tanks. All they really need is a capacitor replacement, and most of them will be good to go for another 30 years. My modest game room is filled with consoles, upscalers, controllers, professional video monitors, and of course, physical games. Most of my collection contains hardware and games that I genuinely like. I don't really collect just to collect. My game room is full of consoles and games that I have memories with. Hey everyone, Travis Bowman here, a fingerstyle guitar player and retro video game nerd. Let's take a look at some of the physical games in my collection that I promised myself I would never sell. Some of these are heavy hitters that are worth quite a bit of money, and some of them are just common. This is going to be a great discussion video, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this stuff as we go along. I'd also love to know which item in your collection that you would never sell, so let's jump into it. Legend of Dragoon is one of the best RPGs on the Sony PlayStation, and in my opinion, one of the best RPGs ever made. There's definitely something nostalgic about a game so big and epic that it has to be played on 4 separate discs. This one and Final Fantasy VIII were my first RPGs that I ever played as a kid. Like most games that featured multiple discs, at some point, disc 1 got scratched up pretty bad. I had it resurfaced, but ultimately there was no saving it. I think I ordered a new disc 1 that was scratch-free from eBay years ago, but the rest of the discs, manual, and artwork are from my childhood. The internet is constantly asking for a remake of this gem, and although I usually don't care for such things, I think this one really deserves a modern reimagining. The combat had a really unique twist on turn-based games at the time, with a quick time event-like mechanic that made your attacks stronger if you succeeded at them. A lot of folks say that Claire Obscure Expedition 33 is almost like a spiritual sequel due to the similarities in the combat system. The story and world in Legend of Dragoon is top tier, and this was one of the first times that I actually got invested in the characters of a video game. Sonic is a great character, but we can all admit that he's probably just a little bit one-dimensional. RPGs are designed to get you involved and invested in the story and those characters. This game is one of the few that inspired me to play music. I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel to a few places around the world to play fingerstyle guitar. In 2021, I spent 7 months in Dubai to play at the World Expo, and I convinced some of the other musicians to record some video game music with me. I became great friends with a violin player from Canada named Tomo, and she and I put together the theme for Royal Castle and recorded a music video for it on site at a hotel in Dubai. The music video is on my channel, and as of right now, it's gotten over 25,000 views. A lot of you guys praise my YouTube videos for featuring music from Phantasy Star Online and Legend of Dragoon. This is one of a few different tunes from that game that I've covered on my YouTube channel. The game is the ultimate nostalgic title for me. Let me know which game is that for you in the comment section below. The Nintendo 64 was a weird console, but every kid wanted one back in the late 90s. I managed to get one at some point, and I have this distinct memory of going to Toys R Us with my dad back in the day. For some reason, I was allowed to get 2 games at this store. I don't know if I was just being extra good or what, but maybe this was when the N64 was on his way out. I don't know. I honestly don't know why I didn't choose any of the Zelda or Mario titles. Maybe I didn't even see them. They could have been sold out at this point in the Nintendo 64's lifespan, but I picked up Castlevania and Hybrid Heaven. Of course, I threw away the original boxes back then. I feel like everybody did. Boxes are just cardboard. The game cartridge is what the money paid for, right? Now that I'm over 30 and both my parents have passed on, I wanted something physical to encapsulate those memories in, and naturally, I found both of these games complete in box. Despite what many folks will tell you, these are great games. Castlevania is one of the best platformers on the system, and Hybrid Heaven is one of the coolest fighting/strategy games ever made, and as a result, it's my favorite game of all time. It's a very strange thing for a Sega fanboy to say. A long time ago, I made a review video all about Hybrid Heaven, and it's on my channel if you want to learn more about the game. A similar video for Castlevania is on my to-do list, but I do have a YouTube short out there of me talking about this game, and it's one of my most popular shorts. If I sold either one of these, I would feel like I was selling a part of my childhood memories. Both of these games are great examples of Nintendo 64 games that actually age pretty well, despite the camera being difficult to operate on both games. Which game is the most nostalgic in your collection?
Courage. Don't leave me.
Collecting is such a broad term. Many people choose to collect in different ways. There are some people that will grab literally every single game they can get their hands on to have it on display in their homes, and that's fine for those people, but I never got into that kind of thing myself. Instead of attempting to get the entire library of a video game console, I've found joy in what I like to call mini collections. I'm not bold or rich enough to attempt to collect an entire console's library, but obtaining all the games in a series is actually pretty reasonable for both shelf space and my wallet. When I was a kid, I found myself mostly playing Sonic the Hedgehog and Streets of Rage on the Sega Genesis. It took me a few years, but I finally found all of the mainline games in both of those series complete in box. And no, I don't really count Sonic Spinball, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, or Sonic 3D Blast because I never played those games as a kid. I've got Sonic 1, 2, and 3, and Sonic and Knuckles, and that's enough for me. You know, as a hardcore Sega fan, it's really tough to admit this, but I've never actually completed a Sonic game before. I know it's blasphemy, but it's another thing on my giant to-do list. Shortly after I started writing this script, I decided that I should really right that wrong. I started with Sonic 2 because that really is the most Sonic of all the Sonic games. As of the time I'm writing this, I'm on the very last stage. The Mega EverDrive Pro is helping me get through the game in chunks thanks to its save and load state feature. Some might consider this cheating, but I see it as a healthy practice session. If I can beat it with save states, then I can probably beat it on the real cartridge in one go. Finding the Sonic games for a good price took me quite a while, but I finally got all 4 games complete in box without overpaying. Classic Sonic games are a good example of a game fetching a decent amount of money despite being incredibly popular. There's a lot of copies of these games still out there, but the demand for them is still pretty high, especially for people like me in their mid-30s that are trying to collect their childhood again. Getting the Streets of Rage series was pretty difficult. I found the first 2 for a decent price and jumped on it instantly. The third game in the series is very hard to find for a good price, but I managed to get it without the manual. Rather than spend nearly $100 on a paper booklet, I bought a reproduction manual for a few dollars on eBay. Some of you might think this is blasphemy, but it's fine for me and that's all that matters. I can read the manual if I need to, and that's what it's supposed to be there for, right? Because it took me so long to find all these games at below market price, selling them and rebuying them would not have the same magic. These are relics from my childhood, and I got them all, and I'll have them until the day I die. What 16-bit game is your holy grail? There are many major events in my personal life that I wish I could go back in time to change, most of which have to deal with people in my life that are no longer around, but after I time traveled to deal with all that stuff, I would definitely tell myself to not throw away my Pokémon boxes. I have a distinct memory of throwing away the box to Pokémon Gold and Pokémon Crystal. Why did my dumbass little child self do that? Probably because the box was just cardboard back then. I mean, who gives a damn about the box? The game is what you paid for, and the manual, reading is for nerds, dude. Registration card? That's boring as hell and useless. I just want to catch them all already. It never would have occurred to me that these boxes and manuals would be worth hundreds of dollars in the future. Way back around 2016 or so, I made it my goal to collect all of the Pokemon games that I had as a kid. Obviously for nostalgic reasons, but for some practical reasons as well. If you have all the right hardware, you can still trade Pokemon back and forth with these old games. All you need to do is replace the save battery and you're good to go for another 15 or 20 years. This is actually a very good starter project for someone that's new to soldering. You only have 2 solder points to worry about, and there are a ton of great guides out there to show you just how to do it. I stopped playing Pokemon right after the 2nd generation, and as a result, I only have Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal. I also grabbed the Gen 1 remakes that are Fire Red and Leaf Green. Being patient was key here. You see, these games are by no means rare. It's Pokemon after all. This is the biggest selling franchise ever. If you go to any retro gaming convention, you're pretty much guaranteed to find every single one of these games. The problem isn't supply, it's demand. Everybody wants them, and that's why they're so expensive. It took me over a year of searching, but I finally got every game for a decent price. I think the most I paid was $80 for Leaf Green, and the reason that I did that was because it was the last one on my list. I'm pretty sure I got Red and Blue for about $40 each, and I think I paid a bit more than that for both Gold and Silver, but keep in mind that this was about 4 or 5 years ago. All of these games are more expensive now, but the prices vary depending on which game you want. Man, am I glad that I don't have nostalgia for the Heart Gold and Soul Silver remakes. Those games are way too expensive. I'll keep these games forever because they mean a lot to me. My girlfriend Emily had never played a Pokemon game before, and last winter we beat the first generation together at the exact same time, and it was a beautiful experience. Say what you will about Nintendo and Game Freak being incredibly greedy. I mean, they sold us 2 copies of the exact same game with the incentive to catch them all. But looking back on it, it was also incentive to interact with another nerd that was into this stuff too. I remember trading Pokemon with some kids on the playground at recess. And now I get to trade Pokemon with someone that I see myself spending the rest of my life with. The symbolism here is through the roof. The object of these games is to catch them all, and now I managed to catch all of the Pokemon games from my childhood. These games sit proudly on my gaming shelf and will continue to do so for years to come. Jet Grind Radio is one of the most unique games that I've ever played, and it's made a lasting impression on me. The music, graphics, and gameplay are just completely timeless, and I still find myself drawn to this game nearly 30 years later. The gameplay is a lot like Tony Hawk on steroids. You've got to skate around and do tricks, rollerblade around and do tricks, but you also have graffiti to paint on various walls and structures. Beating the level requires you to paint a certain amount of graffiti. These designated graffiti targets are easy to reach in the first part of the game, and they can be really hard to get to by the end of it. The authorities are trying to stop you the entire time, of course, and eventually they'll be sending tanks and helicopters after you. If there ever was a game with a flat-out perfect vibe, for me, it's this one. You'll never find another game quite like Jet Grind Radio. Even the sequel on the original Xbox just doesn't capture the same magic that this first game did. I'll never sell this game because it's one of the few I've kept in my collection since childhood. The disc is the very same one I first popped into my Dreamcast all those years ago, and it still works perfectly. There's something special about having your childhood copy of a game that you truly love, and I'll admit that I missed out on that feeling a lot growing up. In my house, when it was time for a new console, we always sold the old console to get funds to pay for the new one. Even when I was a kid though, I knew that I wanted to keep this game. It was Sega at its most wacky, and I knew that I would miss them after the Dreamcast was discontinued. This game will forever be in my top 5 comfort games. I've beaten this one at least 20 times in my lifetime, and I'll wager that I'll end up beating it a few more times before I'm gone. If you've never tried out Jet Grind Radio on your Sega Dreamcast, you're missing out on one of the best games on that system.
Right on!
What you're currently seeing is a very old photo of me holding Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that I found at a retro store in Florida. This was many, many years ago. I'm pretty sure that this game was fetching $45 or so back then. The reason I'm posing for a photo with it is because even in the early 2010s, I knew this game was legendary. Finding the original Marvel vs. Capcom was pretty easy, and I think I got it in person for about $50 or so. Finding the second iteration on the Sega Dreamcast is a mixed bag. I wanted to tell you that this game is one of the few over $200 games on the system, but it seems as though it's fallen down to just over $100 in recent years. It's kind of infuriating because I paid around $160 for my copy a few years ago and felt terrible about dropping that much money for one stupid game. Isn't it crazy how unpredictable the retro video game market can be though? When I was looking up this game as I'm writing the script, I half expected the game to have skyrocketed to over $500. It kind of makes sense because the Dreamcast was the last console ever from Sega, and these are disc-based games that might not last as long as cartridge-based ones. The reason I never want to sell it is because of that damned photo. I always regretted not picking up the game at that particular time. However, I had just moved down to Florida to pursue playing music for a living, and I couldn't afford it. I moved back to my home state, and I felt the urge to try to find it again. Of course, when I actually decide to pull the trigger, it's selling for over $200. So I found myself a decent deal for quite a bit less than that, and the catch was that the jewel case was in terrible condition. The disc and manual were pretty much pristine though. It occurred to me that there's a way to sacrifice a good condition jewel case and swap it out with a bad one, so I made a YouTube video about it, with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 being the candidate for a new case. And my god, was I ever slayed alive for making a video about swapping jewel cases. Apparently this is common knowledge, and I never should have done such a thing. Still, there were a few comments from the younger generation that didn't know about this either, so I feel like the video has a purpose after all. Have you guys ever swapped jewel cases before? I know, once you do that, then the game isn't actually authentic anymore, but that sort of thing doesn't bother me. The reason I'll never sell this one is because of the legacy and aura that went with the game for so long. I always regretted not getting it for under $50, and when it jumped to the going rate of over $200, I felt like it was now or never, and now I have it. This game is one of the best fighting games ever made, and now I have the best version of the game on my favorite console. That wonderful fear of missing out really has us video game nerds by the balls, don't it? All in all, these games are still in my collection because they mean something to me. Not because they're necessarily the best games, but because I really enjoy every single one of them. My game shelf is pretty small these days, and I made myself a promise that I'll never overload it with games that I don't really care for. What are some of your holy grail video games that you'll never sell, and why? What's the most money you've ever spent on one video game before? Let me know the answers to all those questions in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks very much. Bye bye.